Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Saturday evening fireside chat. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, and I think it probably threw a lot of you off that it was posted. We're having a fireside chat today, but circumstances are a little bit different. We still will be having a fireside chat tomorrow evening, our normal Sunday evening fireside chat. And I think this week we've got quite a bit to talk about. Tara and I will be here chatting about the things that we've had this week. But tonight, since Ruan has been here for some trial drives, and it'll be his last drive tomorrow, welcome, Ruan.
Thank you very much, Marc.
It is
It's a pleasure.
customary to shake hands in front of the fire. It's actually good to sit around a fire with you for a change, because, I mean, normally in the bush we sit around a fire every night.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, it's part of bushveld living, is sitting around a fire, and I suppose the word is chewing the fat. And we talk about all sorts of things, and I want to start this evening by just chatting about how you felt the last few drives. I mean, all your drives, being in a new area. I know what it's been like for me, being in new areas. You haven't really spent much time in Kruger, but you've spent some time in some other really beautiful parts.
True. No, it's a very nice experience. I really enjoyed every minute of it. There's some new plants that I would love to learn.
Yeah.
It's always a new thing. I just love to be in a new area. There's new things to learn. That's always a nice thing to, especially if you're a bush person, you love nature.
Yeah.
Not just the animals, the plants and the grasses and
That's right.
different insect and bird species as well.
Yeah. You should have been here in summer, or you
That's
must be.
true.
But yes, it's at least you've had some good still around. Has there been anything that sort of stood out that you've noticed? I suppose if you haven't really or found his name, it's not going to be easy to describe it. But
true.
Trees, any big trees that you've seen that you're not familiar with?
I'm not too familiar with your jackalberries and those, but you told me they were Karula walked past. And that big
jackalberry.
Yeah, that's a big
Beautiful, eh?
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's probably one of the nicest jackal. I've seen that up on the Kruger River, and even down on the Sabi River and the Sand River. Actually, they're riparian, so on some of the major rivers, there's some really, really amazing jackalberries. But it's a tree that you find all the way up into East Africa, so
cool.
That's got some beautiful specimens.
No, true.
I think it's probably one of my favorites. It's like one of those classic leopard trees.
That's so true.
So, getting on, sticking with trees to some extent, but expanding a little bit to habitat. Now, you spend a lot of time in KwaZulu-Natal, and this is a place I've only been in limited occasions when I was very much younger. In fact, no, so much younger that I was only this big. Hello, hippo. Actually, the hyena were going mad earlier, and I figured that maybe they were near the kill, and the lion might have left. But
yeah, when we passed now, she brought the cubs back.
Did she?
Yes.
Wow, and it's going to be quite interesting tonight with the cubs, the kill, the lion, the hyena, the leopard on the other side. There's quite a bit.
There's going to be some action tonight, I think.
I think so, yeah. And I think if I can remember, I was probably 8 or 9 the last time I was in Kruger. And I've always revered that area. I've always thought that it's one of the most beautiful areas in terms of vegetation, because it's probably double the rainfall than here. I mean, what is the average rainfall down there? Do you know?
It's about 1,000 mils a year.
Yeah, so it's not quite double, but it could be. I'd say that we here in the northern part of the Sabi Sand can probably expect about 500. Yeah.
Almost double.
Yeah.
Can be, but the problem with Sicily and a lot of parts in Zululand is Crumelina is taking over.
Which one?
Crumelina cordata at the moment is one of the top 10 most invasive plant species in the world. And
I don't even know it.
You get a lot of, especially riverine areas, and it's in that little seed pocket is thousands and thousands that it disperses and it just starts growing because they brought it in the settlers as a horse feed.
Okay.
And it's now just taking over. And they're struggling to control it.
And it obviously gets used by game, so
not a lot.
Not a lot.
No, it's not animals. Not really eating it.
Wow. Yeah, that reminds me of the Cape, the Roykrans.
Yeah.
And some of that black wattle. You know, they talk about a seed base after 10, 15 years of these trees throwing seed, that you get something like 10,000 seeds per square meter or something. That's big, because it's all sandfelt, and of course it's soft sand, and you get the mole rats, and well, it's the Cape Dune mole rat and the Dune mole rat, or rather the Cape mole rat, Bathyergus. And of course they turn the soil, the sand, so they bury the seed, and then what happens is a fire comes through, because fire is such an important part of the ecosystem there, and that just triggers the growth. So the Roykrantz is a type of, what is it? It's not quite an acacia, but it's related. It's one of the legumes. But anyways, it was brought in for its tannin, I think. But anyway, so you spent time. Funny enough, you mentioned that you spent time in St. Lucia.
Yeah, it was. We used to do drives from Cape Vidal, St. Lucia.
Yeah.
We did also do whale watching, some fishing tours, going down the estuary, lots of hippos, big crocs, and then Tembe and Sisluunfolosi as well.
Well, Tembe is a place I've got to get to. I mean, Tembe, we see occasionally, I get pictures posted from people, and occasionally when I'm told, and I get the message, because there's a cam at Tembe.
Yes, that's
and we see some of those big tuskers.
They are enormous. There's one still there. He's quite an old chap now at the moment, but his tusk are so big. A lot of times if it gets too heavy for him, he puts his tusk in the sand, because it's sand forest area.
Yeah.
And he rests his head for a couple of minutes, and then he pulls it out and he starts walking off.
I've known an elephant like that. In fact, his name was Mandleve. I'm going to take that out for now. He was one of the last big tuskers here before this new group have been named. And he wasn't even called one of the Magnificent Seven, even though his tusks were probably longer. But this is an elephant on the Sabi River named Mandleve. And in his latter years, in the years before he died, his right tusk, if I'm not mistaken, if it was his right tusk, it was pointed lower than his left. And the same thing, it was so big and so heavy, and he was getting to be such an old man, he just couldn't carry the weight of his head and his tusks. And he would rest that tusk on the ground, and it even got to be where, when he needed to walk, he'd sort of sway his body, and then he'd lift his head and his tusk, and he'd take a step. But I've also heard that some of those big tuskers will actually break their tusks because they get too long.
Yeah, I've heard it as well.
Yeah, that it just gets to be too much of a burden for them, that they'll actually, I don't know, maybe it's accidental that they break. I mean, there's a famous elephant, Zhao, I think it was, and Mac, if I'm not mistaken, is another one of the big ones these days. But one of the old bulls, Zhao, who I think was named after Zhao Albacini, who was a pioneer. Can't even remember the history of that. My history is bad, especially with people. But I know that he broke his tusks, and I know that Mac is another big bull. I think he's also broken his tusks. But I'd love to see those elephants at Tembe. Tembe Elephant Park is probably right up at the top of the list of my places to go one of these days.
And the nice thing about Tembe is they only allow a certain amount of vehicles in the park. I think it's about, at the most, 10 or 15 vehicles.
Yeah.
And you have to have, unfortunately, a 4x4 because it's sand forest.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And Tembe at the moment, they say, is some of your biggest bodied elephants in the world. So they are massive.
Oh, so you reckon they're bigger than the Kaoko Felts or the Namibian Ellies, desert Ellies?
I think they'll rival them, yeah. You must go and see. You have to.
No, I do have to. I have to. You know, like this far west in the Kruger, in these sort of heavily populated areas with the lodges and all the game drives, a lot of the big bulls of Kruger don't really venture this way. They stick around the Olifantsletaba River, more or less the central region of the park, where there's sort of vast Mopani forests and vast areas that they can roam in, that they're not really hassled too much by humans. There are still some big tuskers, and I don't think any of the elephants in Kruger actually can match those in Tembe. But isn't there supposed to be a corridor between Tembe and Kruger?
Yeah, between Tembe and Kruger.
Yeah.
Tembe is more towards
Mozambique.
It's on the border of Mozambique, because the fences was normally open, but then poaching happened too much, and they put a fence in between. But it's way at the bottom of Mozambique. At the bottom, very close, I would say probably about an hour's drive, or a little less. It's very close to Code because the road splits line. You go to Cozy Bay, that site, and you just go to Tembe on the left.
Okay.
So Sodwana Bay, Cozy Bay is quite close there as well.
I never went to Cozy Bay. The closest I got to Cozy Bay was called Sodwana. In the days I used to dive at Sodwana. But that was also a few years ago. But there was supposed to be, I don't know, I remember there was talk about a corridor being built, or rather not built, but a corridor being created to get elephants access from Tembe through Mozambique and the eastern side of South Africa, Kruger, right up through all the way into southern Tanzania to Sulu and the southern part of Tanzania.
That would be awesome.
You know, it would be. I don't know how far they've got with that. I mean, there have been great developments with the Mozambique side opening up. But I've heard, did you spend time in Mozambique?
I did, yeah. Up in Tet.
In?
Tet. It's by Kaborabassa.
Okay.
Kaborabassa Dam.
Okay. And what do you think? I mean, how is the game sort of moving back into those areas?
Yeah, there's still loads of animals there. Same with when I was up in Matete in Zimbabwe. Yeah. There's still lots of animals there. Not a lot of rhino. Rhinos almost been poached out there, but huge herds of buffalo, lots of leopard, loads of illies. Lion population is not that as big in the north. It's a little more down. But other animals still, loads of sable, beautiful sable. Yeah? Yeah, loads of sable still up there.
Wow. I mean, I can boast going to some really wonderful areas in Africa, but they're a lot further afield. And I think it's that age-old thing is that you haven't really travelled till you've seen what's on your own doorstep. And we're talking about stuff that is on our doorstep, especially here in Mozambique. I mean, I've spent time in Tanzania in some really good elephant places like Sulu and Tarangire. Have you been up that way?
No, I want to go. Definitely have to go. I want to see those huge herds of buff up there.
Well, when you get to Sulu, and you can look out over the summer. If you get into the open grasslands that's north of the lakes, you can see some of those herds of buff, and there's not really many high points because it's quite flat. But you can get to a point where you're looking out over those grasslands, and you can see it's almost like wall-to-wall buffalo.
Sure.
But then you get up to Tarangire National Park, in the northern part of Tanzania, and you get these swamplands that dry out in the dry season, and you stand on a ridge because there you've got much higher ridges, and because you're further away and you're higher up, and you look down over a place like Salale Swamp, you see the same thing, but instead of buffalo, it's elephant.
Sure.
So you got a couple of thousand, but it's stretched out over, and you can see probably a 5-7 kilometer stretch of swampland, and from the north you see these little dots all over the swampland, all the way, and that's only the adults that you can see. It's not the children.
Sure. That will be amazing.
I know there's just far too much to experience. There's just far too many open or unexplored. They're still unexplored and undeveloped, uncommercial, non-commercialized places that are a little bit out of the way that people haven't really gotten to yet, that are still phenomenal. I think.
Oh, for sure.
I think I envy anybody who's young and coming into this industry, because it hasn't all been done. It's not like every corner has been explored and seen. I think there's still some magnificent places to explore. And then there are a lot of countries that have had civil war.
Especially up in Western Africa.
Yeah.
Because I would love to go out there to see the forest elephants.
I would. I've spoken to Seb. Now, you didn't meet Seb, or did you?
No, not yet.
I think he was on leave already when you arrived. Seb comes from Gabon.
Okay.
And, well, they've got those open areas in the forest in Gabon where you're going to have the forest elephants and Situtunga.
Bongo.
And gorillas, lowland gorillas.
Sure.
So you've got gorillas and elephants and feeding in the same open areas.
That's amazing.
Or there's that national park in Gabon that's on the coast, and I forget names. But there's a national park in Gabon where you can have elephants on the beach and just beyond the breakers, humpback whales. Hey, that's got to be bizarre.
That must be bizarre.
Yeah. Well, not bizarre, but that's got to be an experience to be lived. I'd love to get to.
Definitely unique.
To places like that. But then there's also Central African Republic, Congo, where they also have these, I forget the name for it, where the elephants are opened up these openings in the forest where there's water. And that's where the bongo and a lot of the animals congregate. Evidently, I hear the flies are pretty bad, but gee, until you've been to places like Masai Mara and Serengeti, and you with the migration, nobody knows flies. Even then, as well, man, those aren't even biting flies. Those are just little ones that get in the corner of your eye and up your nose, and they just tickle. But then there's also the tsetsis. Are there tsetse in Mozambique?
But not as many as you go up towards Zim's got quite a few.
When you go into the sandveld of southern Tanzania, and there's lots. Wherever there's soft sand, there are tsetse flies, because that's their breeding ground. They're quite amazing flies. They don't lay eggs. They actually give birth live to one young. One tsetse fly gives birth to one young. It's almost it emerges as a pupa almost, and then it's got to pupate in the sand to an adult. And it's got to be soft, warm sand. So often when you're driving through some of that brachystegia woodland and stuff, and it's in really soft sand, you get those tsetses. And I swear those tsetse flies, they know where they watch you, and they know when the critical moment is before they bite you. It's like you're in four-wheel drive. You're going down a very steep incline, and you've got your foot on the clutch or your brake, and you're working the vehicle, and it bites you on your little toe. And it's like this red-hot nail or red-hot pin that gets jabbed into you. So where else? I mean, what else can you tell us about the places you've been? I mean, in terms of it being different to here, you've come from an area where there's a lot of rhino. You're trying to find rhino today. You haven't really seen rhino yet.
No, just those fresh tracks the one morning.
Tomorrow?
Yes, I'm definitely going. But I first want to see how Kruger and the Cups are doing with all the activity that's going on.
Yeah. It might be in her favour actually having this kill here. That the hyena are going to be concentrating more this side than that side. I couldn't believe how high she took that impala.
I was just wondering because this morning didn't those lions take the Cups to the drainage line?
Same drainage line, that Karula's in, but just a little bit more north. Yeah. But I think when hyena pressure gets too much on this kill, those lions are going to leave it to them.
Yeah.
And if they do that, I'm thinking that maybe Karula and her cubs are going to be spared the pressure from hyenas, because they're going to have the rest of this wildebeest to look at. Sure. Well, it'll be up to you to go and find out in the morning.
No, we'll go have a look, definitely.
And
can't wait.
Follow up on some of the rhino tracks.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's been great having you.
Same, yeah. Thank you for having
me. We've all, I know a lot of the viewers as well, been impressed with your knowledge. You've come up with some really interesting facts that a lot of us, even myself, have learned. Well, that's just the way it is. We all have this passion for nature, and we all have our own way of learning about it, and there are always going to be things that you know that I don't, and vice versa. And that's probably what makes us what creates a really good team, is having people that have different pockets of knowledge and being able to pool all of that knowledge and bring you out there the best that we can in terms of interpreting African wildlife and nature to you. So thanks for joining us for these few days.
It's a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been fun having you. And look forward to your drive tomorrow. Let's find some rhino.
For sure.
Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
And thanks everybody. We'll see you at 6:30 Central African time tomorrow for our morning drive. Tomorrow evening will be another fireside chat. As I said earlier, there's a special thing that Tara and I want to show you, and that'll be after our drive tomorrow afternoon. I don't know, I think maybe Tara's driving, or maybe me. No, maybe we'll just have to fight over it. Maybe we'll have to draw straws or do that sort of, what do you call it? Rock, paper, scissors. We need to invent one. Another one, elephant or something, to challenge rock, paper, scissors. Anyways, my name is Marc. Been with Ruan. Daniel has been on camera, and Tara in final control. Herman is still fighting with the edit suite. And Siyabonga, thanks for setting everything up. From all of us here at Wild Earth Safari, have a wonderful Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. All the moms out there. You've got a special drive tomorrow for Mother's Day. To my mom, happy Mom's Day. And all the mothers out there. Bye, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.